Good morning and welcome to the Think React Lead radio show. I'm your host, Dom Faussette, executive coach and leadership speaker with Think React Lead, here with you on Intelligent Talk 960 The Patriot, KKNT. Well, folks, we are back in this studio here at 960 The Patriot. And, you know, I just came back like 48 hours ago. I was in St. Martin on a fantastic vacation. And I'm bringing this up, not to brag, maybe a little bit, but really to talk about leadership from a standpoint of how your selfish thoughts could potentially offend people. And a lot of people say, I don't care what people think, and that just shows a lack of leadership quality, because a real leader does maybe not care what people think, but they concern themselves what people think about themselves and their situations. And while I was there, I would hear Europeans and Americans say things like, oh man, I have the beach to myself. Because of COVID, everything was basically shut down and it was quiet. They were probably at 20-25% capacity. And I'm bringing this up because the people of St. Martin are probably some of the nicest people on any island that I've been to. And when there's nobody there, they can't feed their families. So when we as Americans or Europeans or travelers get there and are excited and loudly exclaim, I'm glad nobody's here, you're selfish. And a lot of people don't even think about that until it's brought to their attention. So I'm bringing this up because what statements are you making as a leader where you're saying things but your employees, it offends them or rubs them the wrong way? Here, maybe you haven't traveled like that, but you have a direct reports, and you're probably making double what they're making. So when you go to talk about your vacations or the things that you're buying for Christmas or the things you're buying for your spouse, and half of your team or 10 to 20 people on your team can barely keep their lights on, are overdue on their credit cards, have marital issues because of finances, right? What are you conveying? Are you conveying that you're a selfless leader? A selfish leader, I should say, not a selfless. A selfish leader, that's exactly what you're conveying. And on the Think React Lead radio show, as you guys have heard before, Think React Lead is think as an executive, react like a soldier, and lead in every single aspect of your life. And really what it boils down to is service, right? Honesty, integrity, loyalty, and service, some of the things we talk about. And if you have problems like really getting all that digested, use my mantra, which is change one life every day for the rest of your life. And if you wake up and do that, like the things that maybe you struggle with or your selfish tendencies because nobody's brought them to your attention that rub people the wrong way, they will dissipate. They will go away. And why am I bringing this up? One, because I can, and it's very important to remind people during the holiday season, Christmas, Thanksgiving, that everybody doesn't have it like you. Right? And I'm not going to suggest that you have to go out and volunteer every day, but I'm bringing this up so you have awareness. And speaking of awareness, this next guest, like it's a TV show, which you know what? This guest I have here today, I was introduced by Raul Martinez, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he's like, dude, you got to have this guy on. And, you know, I get a lot of people who say, hey, you got to have this guy on. And 80% of the time, it's just not a good fit. But, you know, I met this guy in person, went up to Prescott, Arizona, and met him. And speaking of humility and speaking of being selfless, like when you meet the guy, you're like, okay, just a regular guy. You don't know that he's a seasoned veteran. You don't know that he's, you know, a leader of businesses. You don't know that, you know, he's a founder. He's a community leader. This is not in his bio, which I'll get to in a second. He's 40 under 40 in Prescott, right? That's a win. He forgot about that as I'm looking at him because he's accomplished so much. So Grant has spent 14 years in the United States Army, with the first 8 on active duty in the Special Operations community. After leaving active duty, moved back home to Prescott, AZ with his wife and children to focus on his family business and his community. The first venture was a barbershop that grew from 1 chair to 7 and a staff of 13 within the first year and a half. After doubling the size and revenues the first 4 years, he partnered with another veteran buddy from childhood and purchased a 14,000 square foot warehouse and focused on growing the brand. Folks, we talk about branding so much here on the show. The entire Founding Fathers Collective houses John Hancock Barbershop, City Tavern, 7-6 Speakeasy, which is very fancy, by the way. Raul took me in there. Merchant Coffee, Liberty Mercantile, Founders Gym, and Mountain Club Jiu-Jitsu. And, you know, folks, I was there and I experienced everything there. And you talk about a top-notch space. Like, it's clean, it's crisp, it's friendly. Like, the moment I walked in, there was a lady that apparently had a lost look on my face. And she walks up to me and she just says, "Hey, how can I help you? Who are you waiting for?" I'm like, wow, if most businesses operated like this, I think they'd be in business longer. So Grant, thank you very much for coming down. I greatly appreciate that. For coming on the show. You know, you run a good operation, sir.
Hey, thanks, Dom, for having me on. Super appreciate it. And there was a lot said there, so thanks. I guess just thanks for, with all the opportunities you have of sitting down and talking to guests and learning their story, taking the time out to learn mine, and you know, I'll reciprocate by taking you out and going shooting. And
there it is.
Having a fun pheasant hunt.
So folks, let me explain something to you. Right before the show, he asked, "Hey, do you want to go hunting?" And my initial reaction was yes. But then I realized, so you guys have to understand, he's a special operations sniper. And I do like to hang out with people that do things that are better than me, but I got nervous. I'm like, okay, I'm totally going to suck at this. But you know what? I own the fact that I'm not going to be able to operate at his level. And one of the things I like about Grant, we've only had 2 or 3 conversations, is his leadership towards civic duty. Like he's got a big heart, and he's never mentioned it to me, but I can see it. I can see it in his staff. And I want to ask you this, Grant. All of your staff is friendly.
Yeah.
All of them lead from a place of the other person, not themselves. That starts from the top. Like, it starts with the tip of the spear, which is you in this scenario. How did you develop that?
I think a lot of it came from, when I started John Hancock Barbershops 6 years ago now, a huge part of that came from my personal faith, and then, of course, everything that was kind of implemented and allowed me to really exemplify and stretch that throughout my military career on active duty. And so leaving active duty and moving into the civilian sector and back to my home community, I think a lot of veterans kind of sell themselves short on what they have to give back to their communities, but the reality is, like, the military or government has spent so much money, time, and effort into investing into you being successful at whatever capacity that might be, whether it's 2 or 3 years or 30-year career.
Right.
And if you can't figure out how to manage and negotiate, you know, that citizen world when you get out, you're selling yourself short, because you really are set up for success a lot better than a lot of your peers that don't have that experience. And I think where a lot of veterans kind of fall flat is they fall into that entrapment or snare of making the military their entire identity. And so they leave the military and that sense of purpose that they've accomplished from their time spent there.
Right.
But they don't know fully how to find that in the civilian world, and so they kind of fall flat on their feet. And I think that's where a lot of the veteran communities kind of failing each other.
Oh yeah, we are.
Or just a lot of the American community kind of fails veterans. But on that note, at the end of the day, that ownership is on the specific individual. It's not on the city to accomplish that. It's on the government. It's not on your family. It's on you, the individual veteran, to understand kind of, hey, if I'm going to succeed here just like I did in the military, that's on me, and I need to figure out what that looks like and take steps to make that happen for myself. So,
what's it take? And so you brought up that, and I'm paraphrasing, that we oftentimes get out and that's our legacy. Like, it stops right there. You can be 24, 42, whatever that is. And I remember I walked into a Walmart and I saw a greeter, and he had his Navy hat on, and he was old. And I saw him, and I saw myself in his eyes. I'm like, I can't. Like, I can't be that guy. I can't have my Air Force career be the thing. And that's how I kind of started this business, just out of fear.
Yeah.
But what do you think it is that makes somebody who gets out, at the end of the day, when you get out, you're young. whether you're 24 or 42, you're young. You still have half or more of your life to live. What do you think it is that stops them in their tracks, and how can they fix that?
I think a lot of that lies with where you find your identity as an individual. And so if you go in to the military, which is very good at breaking people down and rebuilding them into what they want them to be, if you go in at a young age and you're not grounded in your morals, your ethics, your values, who you are as an individual or person, it's very easy to gravitate towards who the military says you're supposed to be.
Right.
And believe it, because of course they build you into something that is better than kind of who you are. But if you don't have a healthy grasp of what they're building and what they're providing you to kind of be and train you into what you're supposed to be doing for your career there, once you leave, a lot of individuals have wrapped their entire identity into what they were when they were on active duty, and then that's who they become, And so you see a lot of that. My wife is a social worker, works at the VA. Anytime I go there, or when I'm around some of the older veterans, you have the very harsh realities. You see veterans who've transitioned well, and you see veterans who haven't.
It's a big disparity. Like, there's a gap, a huge gap.
Huge. And it's massive. But in talking to them, you realize a lot of these people have the same narrative that they've told themselves. If they have not transitioned well, and you see them years down the road, and they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and you realize their narrative that they've told themselves, it always defaults back to, hey, when I was in the Marine Corps, when I was in the Army, when I was in the Air Force. And then you start digging a little bit and you realize, like, man, you peaked at like an E4, an E5, an E6, or an O1, O2. It's like you never got past that. You spent a couple years doing that job.
And that's you for
5 years.
decades.
That's who you've chosen to be for the next 20, 30, 40 years of your life. So that's, I guess, just for me, when I went in a little older. I think I went in at 23. It was very apparent to me that, hey, I'm going to take everything that the military is going to make me, take it not with a grain of salt, but really buy into it. But also, I very much know that at some point I have to get out of this.
That makes sense.
And when I do, my identity can't be, okay, I was a special operations guy, or this is what I did.
There's more to you than that.
Yeah, a lot more.
We're talking about leadership, and we really touched on some servant leadership points, and just this level of confidence or complacency that happens oftentimes with veterans, but not just veterans, because I've heard these conversations from collegiate athletes that didn't make it to the league, the guy that was a quarterback in his high school team. Like, a lot of people, and I see it more with dudes than I do with women, but a lot of people hold their hat on something that they had in their 20s, and here they are 40 and wonder why they're not successful. But I digress. Let's move forward. Grant, thank you, sir, for being here. Now, every time I have a guy of your caliber in here, there's stories don't just flow off, right? The way you might hear, for those of you civilians that have been to a bar, you hear a guy that served 6 months in basic training, got kicked out, and all of a sudden he's got stories to tell. We call him Sergeant Toppets. Real servicemen and women don't operate that way. But Grant, if you don't mind, can you share, just for the listeners and the viewers, a story where you're on deployment and things maybe were a little different than what we see on TV?
Yeah, I think that's the reality. Is like, you talk to anybody who's actually honest, there's a lot more tomfoolery going on, and stuff is nonsensical, and in the fog of war, or when stuff's happening, there's always a lot more humor, because life just plays out so much more at random and chance than the amount of meticulous planning that goes into an operation or a mission or whatever. So you're on target, and you always have to lend, what's the saying, dude? Murphy's Law, right? You always plan for Murphy. So the funny ones are always the best ones to say, because that's when guys actually have been around and they know what they're talking about. Because if they have a lot more funnier stories, it's like, the cool stories, we all have those, but the funny ones, those are gold.
You can't make them up. You can't make up a funny story.
So super funny. So this one mission, I think it was like 2012 or 13, and we just started getting augmented with, so I spent time in Ranger Regiment, 8 years there, up at 275, but we just started augmenting some of our attachments with the Air Force PJs, so some of your guys.
Right.
And solid guys. They have a little bit more of a laid-back approach to their mission set, probably largely because they're such a smaller group of guys, and their mission set isn't necessarily the same as Ranger Regiment, which is a strike force, and we're going in and doing direct action raids and all that stuff, and a lot of it is conducted at nighttime, and they're raids. So these guys are getting attached to us in onesies and twosies.
Why are they getting attached to you?
So they offer a medical element. So
okay.
They used to go through the same pipeline as Rangers, SF, and SEALs for the medical training side, which is the Special Operations Combat Medicine. Since then, they kind of have they conducted their own schoolhouse, they're training themselves and stuff like that. But the reason they were being attached was, a lot of it was there's allowing us to more efficiently run our missions. Most Ranger platoons, we have several medics on hand, so usually about 3 that have all been through that Special Operations Combat medical course. And then in the latter part of the war, you started seeing, Navy EOD being attached to us.
Okay.
Air Force PJs being attached to us. So what you're getting is just a more compounded effect of like a lot more of efficient soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine Corps guys all working in conjunction. The whole Joint Special Operations pool that really is JSOC and stuff. So we just started working with these guys, and I'd been a sniper for, at that point, maybe 4 years. So I was pretty senior, been a junior sniper, a team leader, a section leader. I was running in my own section, and so I'm usually one of my jobs at that point was training, or not training, but planning and executing the infill, the exfil for all the mission sets that we're doing. So whether it's a small team or whether it's an entire platoon or platoon plus of like 40, 50, 60 guys, I was the one that's generally talking to who's getting us to the ground, like the lift package, how we're getting there, planning the routes, all that stuff. And then when we get there, most of the time it's a half package, meaning a helicopter insertion. I'm generally the very first one off the bird because I'm the one that's planning the route to get us to
that makes sense,
to the mission. So it's myself and my junior sniper, and then usually we had one of our own JTACs, like a Ranger JTAC.
What's a JTAC?
JTAC is Joint Terminal Attack.
For everybody, right.
Air Force.
Yep.
So we either have Ranger Regiment guys that go through that training and pipeline, or we have Air Force guys that are attached to us as well. So we'd have internally 2 or 3 JTACs per platoon, and you'd have a Ranger or a Air Force JTAC as well, and then we had an Air Force PJ. So the platoon starts out at like 40 guys, but after you have all the augmentees, now you're talking 60.
It's pretty deep.
60, knuckleheads on target strolling around.
All under 30.
Oh, yeah. Just piped up, waiting to shoot somebody.
Exactly.
Next thing you know, all you're hitting is a little 10x10 compound. You're like, I swear there's a bad guy here. So we land on this target. The helicopters were flying in. They were supposed to land. Let's say we're going north to south, right? And so we're supposed to land, run off the back end of the helicopter. It was like a 47. Run off the back end and go run straight to the target. Somehow they pitched their landing degrees like 180. So when we landed, it's nighttime and I could see the target building, and it's like totally not where it's supposed to be. But I'm like looking at my Garmin. I'm looking. I memorized the map and the layout of where we're supposed to be at and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's definitely the target building. But of course we land in a field, so there's a massive brownout. So I run straight towards the building. All my guys, because the brownout, they don't know where I run. They run the completely opposite direction. So, just like out of a movie, like hot, and just running, and they just disappear into the dark.
You're there.
Yeah, and I'm.
You know what? Let me stop you there. Just like in a movie, or not a movie, but you're watching TV. We're gonna go to commercial break, and that's like the height. Like this is the scene is about to change, and I wanted to stop Grant there because I have a little bit of insight on how this is going to pan out. But I want you, like, this is the funny part, and I want to save it for when we come back. But folks, understand that this is leadership, and leadership oftentimes is funny, but you have to be able to be in the moment and understand that, like, you know what, things are going to get squirrely. As you guys have heard me say, feces is going to hit the oscillating rotor. At the end of the day, you're still alive, and you have to make a decision in the moment. Like, you don't cry, you don't take 15 minutes to make a decision, because it could, in this situation, could cost somebody their life. But for most people that are listening and watching, that, like, it's not life altering, but it could be emotions altering, it could be feelings altering, it could be promotion altering, right? It could be financial impact if you don't make the right decision immediately. Folks, we're just going to jump right back into it. Grant, the floor is yours.
Okay, so no shit, there I was, Afghanistan 2012, right? Like
there it is.
Story that starts out.
Right.
All right, so I run off the bird. I know exactly where I'm going. I run down this corridor. There's, compound walls on both sides. I have a little giant ladder with me because, before every mission, we're planning out how we're probably going to execute it. And we have the imagery to understand how tall the walls are. And one of my jobs sometimes was like getting up on these roofs because I have a little bit less gear. And of course, I have all the experience and everything else that maybe some of the junior team leaders might not have.
Right.
And it's one, maybe it's two of us, and we're a little bit more sneakier too. So anyways, at this specific mission though, it's just myself, my junior team leader. He had to split and go support another platoon for that night doing another mission. So it's just me. So I pull up, I run off the helicopter, run to this wall that I know is the target building. I extend a 25-foot little giant because I had looked at the mensurations and I'm like, okay, that wall's about 20 feet, doing the math. I'm like, I'm going to bring a 25-foot ladder because you always bang.
Right. I'd rather have it, not need it, need it, not have it.
It was not a 25-foot
What
wall.
was it?
It was like a 30-something foot wall. And so I run out there, I'm by myself, and I'm looking around. I run straight to the wall. I start extending my ladder, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of noise because we pretty much landed on the X, meaning we landed within about 100 yards of the target building.
Oh.
And so I'm like beelining it to the target. All my guys take off the other direction. And I'm like the only one in this freaking, dude, it was like a total kill box, man. It's a whole freaking hallway, but it's a street. And I'm
a small street because you're overseas.
Yeah, I'm
right.
extending this ladder, and I'm like, okay, it's pitch black. There's no loom. So I'm like, nobody can see me. And, I'd done enough deployments underneath nods where I knew visually, like, dude, if you don't have these things on your face, you can't see anything. So
right.
I'm like, and I slowly see my guys turning around, running down the other way. And so I'm like, okay, they're about like 50, 100 yards away. Or I'm like, I'm good to go. Maybe a little further. I'm like, I'm going to risk it and see if I can climb up this ladder real quick and at least take the initiative of being the first one to the fight and get the high ground real quick. And
right.
then as they come in, especially because we landed on the X and it was supposed to be a hot target, it's like,
they know you're there.
yeah, at least I'm up on the top.
Exactly.
And I can start
high ground. High ground wins.
My buddies are running it.
Right.
So I'm on the top of the ladder rung, and I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'1", 215 at the time, and I have my kit on, my freaking rifle, and I'm on the very top rung, and I'm reaching for the top of the wall, and I'm like,
still no.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I can't.
No crest.
I'm like, nope. And so I just scamper down this ladder real quick,
right,
and I run across to the other wall, and now I'm just looking at the target building, looking down this alleyway, and then my buddies are running in from the east side, west side, from the east, and I'm looking to the west and kind of guarding the door. But I'm like, okay, I know they'll,
like worst case scenario.
Yeah. There's a couple ways these guys can come approach us to attack, and I got at least 3 of them locked down. And the front door, which is a typical Afghan door, it's like 12, 15 feet tall. If that thing creaks open, I can at least get that guy. But everything else is like open space, and
right,
funky stuff. So then I'm watching, and I'm like hitting my comms, letting my guys know, like, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm at like the east side of the wall, or the south side of this freaking target building I'm supposed to climb on. Hunkered down in the shadows, because nobody can see me. And my comms aren't working. I'm like, shit. And so I'm just sitting there.
Whatever's going to happen, happens, right.
Like, where are my freaking dudes? I'm looking for these guys, and I'm not seeing them, because now I'm like down. I'm not up on the ladder, so I'm like, what is taking so long? So I'm across the way. I'm like, screw it. I put my rifle down, pull out my radio real quick. I have to take off my gloves because now I'm trying to mess with my comms. And I'm just looking down this corridor, and I'm like, nobody's there yet. I'm good. I'm like looking back behind me. Slowly, guys are approaching. And then out of nowhere, 2 dudes come running down this corridor with AKs. And I'm like, I'm just like, I'm not scared, but I'm like, okay, I'm in the dark. My gloves are off, my radio's in one hand, my rifle's at my feet, and I'm on my knees. So I'm like, okay, they can't see me. I got the jump on them, And as soon as I'm like calculating, okay, what do I do real quick? Because I have to grab my rifle real quick and like shoot these dudes.
Right.
This freaking PJ comes and he just like runs over me and just like puts his gun right on my shoulder and starts smoking these dudes. And I was like, oh, cool. They do something.
You
can actually shoot.
Right.
Because
exactly.
every other mission I was working with this guy, he's kind of meandering around doing his
Right.
thing, and like
Air Force style.
we're friendlies, we're always
Right.
hanging out and stuff. But it's like I don't know what he's gonna be able to do, you know. And so he ends up shooting these dudes, and I'm just sitting on my knee watching it happen, and it's like he kind of squeezes me so I can stand up, and I'm like,
A little respect.
good job. So
Okay,
we
sweet.
Walked over there, and finished the dudes off, and did our job, but it was like, you know, no nervousness. You kind
Right.
of you understand the camaraderie and like the level
Mm-hmm.
of training that everybody has. But it was a funny situation. I found myself in a little bit precarious, but you know.
But things that happen. Thank you for sharing, sir. I greatly appreciate that. Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, branding, right? Building relationships is not something that happens in a week. It's not something that happens quick. If you were to give, not if you're going to, because you're just that kind of dude, giving advice to people of today as it relates to relationships, because you have built strong relationships, not just in Prescott, but just all around the world. And you start off with your values. You said early in the show. What are your values? Just, and they don't have to be like dialed in, but just in general, what is it that allows you to be such an influential person? And over the years, not just today, but over the years.
Yeah, so I'll just go straight off of I'm glad we revisited because I'll read to you a little bit of our core focus for Founding Fathers Collective. But Founding Fathers is a strategically focused collective fostering culture and building community through shared experiences. And then our core values are connection, community, honor, growth, adaptability. And we had a little bit of fun with the last one, but strategery instead of strategy.
Right. Fair enough.
But for us, I started the business with an Air Force buddy of mine, very bright guy, and then that was about 2.5 years ago, and then brought on another military buddy myself that I served with over the last year. So the three of us kind of have each of our different roles in growing the business, and we shine, in our strengths. I think too many times as individuals we're always focused on kind of trying to fix our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget to exploit our strengths. And
Right.
so for us, that was very much the focus. Is like, hey, you can always get better at what you're not good at, but where you shine is what you need to focus on, and really allow each one of us to kind of, that's the area of focus and direction that we need to move as individuals and add to the team collectively. But
Right.
For me, when I moved back to Prescott, a huge part of what I wanted to bring back was that level of community and camaraderie that I think a lot of American culture is missing these days, and you find it in the military, and I think it's waning pretty substantially in today's culture. And so for the focus, the first couple of years was how do I move myself out of the equation as fast as possible. I don't need the business or the brand to be geared around me as an individual. The faster I can kind of prop John Hancock up by itself, and people just like John Hancock for what it is, and the people that they come to see, whomever the barbers are or the staff, the better. And you kind of succeeded when people are walking in and then they no longer have any idea who the founder is or the owner.
Right.
And people are like, oh, is this a franchise? Where'd you guys start? And I'm not there, or somebody has to say like, oh, it's the guy over there in the corner, and like, oh, wow, that's cool. So I take that as if I were to be, I don't want to say prideful, but that's a sign of,
It's an accomplishment.
yeah, accomplishing
Yeah.
or succeeding, because I've allowed other people to have that autonomy within the business structure to succeed or fail kind of on their own. I'm not over their heads the entire time.
Not
That's what they
micromanaging.
do.
Yeah.
Hate doing. I'm a huge, probably, I think a lot of it too, from being a sniper for 5 years, so much of my job was very much autonomy on the battlefield. And you either succeed or fail, and mission success or it's critical. But in the business world, I always joke, but it's the truth. I'm not getting shot at. There's nothing I can do that's going to mess up my business so badly that I can't fix it within a day, or 2 days, or a week and a half. And by the time you get to that point in business, if you're failing that bad, it's like, well, you probably had months or if not years.
The writing's
to
on
get
the wall.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to pivot and kind of renegotiate terms and understand the direction you need to go if you're sharp enough, and probably more than that, if you have enough humility to understand and allow people to speak into it when you're messed up. So back to staff and how we hired all of them. A huge part of that was we literally hired them based off of our core values and what we wanted to see
Right.
in people, and it wasn't necessarily based off of what they brought to the table. Like, sure, you can make a good cup of coffee, or you know the gym, or you know how to serve alcohol. That's a byproduct.
It is.
And that's something you can train into people, but what you can't train is character, morals, ethics, values, and it's all trainable, right? But it takes you so much longer to instill that into individuals that you're trying to build a team from the beginning. You want strength and community and ultimately culture and a healthy place to foster all that. So if you can start right out of the gate with all those,
correct,
and the majority of people that are coming to you already have them, and they're coming to you because they find a community or a culture that allows them to thrive in what they perceive to be their strengths, which hopefully it is, and then give them the ability to speak into it, back them for what they back them for their strengths, and allow them to fail, and not get on them for when they
make
do.
A mistake.
People are going to make mistakes.
They're humans, right? We're not robots.
Yeah, and I would much rather work with people that have made mistakes their entire life and get up over and over again and understand and fix it, than people that are too scared to make mistakes, or they just never have made mistakes. And then you can't trust them. You don't know how they're going to, buckle,
move, or
cave, or navigate when they have troubles or conflict. So that has been a core focus for me. As soon as I started, it was how do I really elevate the people around me? How do I focus on the community? How do I give people the autonomy to kind of succeed or fail, and give them the chances to do both? Everything, like I said, is fixable for the most part.
Do you think that your I'm going to just refer to it as like this bird's eye view to leadership in the civilian space? Do you think that stems from you spending a lot of time looking through a scope, and you're so far away from people, and when you're looking through a scope, you see a lot of people, and say you have 3 guys that you're covering, you can see their movements, and you work with the same type of people, and you get to understand how this type of human moves. You know that they're going to go left before they know they're going to go left, because you're able to see a lot more through a scope than you are just with your own eyes. And it sounds like the staff that you're looking at, yes, you might be 5 feet away from them, and I could be way wrong, but you're almost looking into their future to see. Do you think that comes from your experience in the military?
I've never had anybody ask that. That's interesting. I would say more so, I'm okay with the ability to hire people knowing that they're going to fail, and give them that chance. And I think because maybe because of my time behind a long gun, a lot of that is just observing. I think a lot of people think, oh, you're a sniper, you shoot a lot of people, and it's like, well, that's part of it, but really the majority of the job is just observation and collecting intel to give back to your higher ups, and you're a force multiplier in the battlefield. Outside of can you shoot, of course you're expected to do that, but like a monkey can do that. Your real job is like, how can you collect real-time data to feed back to your higher ups and provide them the information and intel they need to carry out the objective of the missions instantaneous. So for me as a business owner and an entrepreneur, like, I'm willing, I don't know, more so than others, but I'm definitely willing and able to like believe in people and give them that rope to hang themselves, knowing that like, hey, I don't think this guy's going to work out, but I'm sure in myself and my business model and the team I have around me right now that if I can hire this person and bring them on and give them the ability to just peer into what right looks like, even if it's for a week or a couple weeks or a couple months, knowing that the expectation's there. You can kind of feel like, I don't think this person's going to work out.
Right.
But I'd much rather err on the side of like, hey, I'll give them a chance, because that's an opportunity for me within that scope to invest as much as I can in as little bit amount of time as possible, knowing like they're probably going to fail, but at least they know what right looks like, and they know that, hey, there's somebody out there that was willing to risk a little bit. And I've had it bite me multiple times, but like I said, everything is absolutely fixable, and it was willing. For me, it was I don't even see it as a risk. It was like, hey, I'm willing to put it out there a little bit for this individual, to bring them on board so they can see kind of like, okay, this is what kind of right looks like. This is what a healthy environment looks like. This is what a boss who cares about me looks like.
Right.
In the hopes that at some point it's going to click
in their life. Yeah.
And then they can go on and understand how to either look for that in the future
Okay.
and be an asset to their future employer or an asset to themselves. And
That makes sense.
As a business owner and everything that we've been doing with Founding Fathers, we very much see what we're building and investing in our leaders. So sure, we have a team of individuals that have bought into what we're doing and want to be a part of it, and that you have to have that as a culture as you build your business. But really, the main focus is how do we invest into them, because nowadays, in today's workforce, nobody stays with the business for 10, 15, 20 years.
Right, very antsy.
They're always looking for the other opportunity, and that's fine. And I'm not going to discredit them, because we live in a state of constant flux. People are always looking for that next fix or that next opportunity, and I get it. But if they're going to come in and believe in our vision, my vision, whatever we've created, that's only going to get them so far. It's only going to get us so far. At some point, there needs to be a win-win, and I need to invest into their future, understanding like, hey, when you came in, you were 18. When you leave at 24, you're going to leave with a lot more than when you came in, and so I should be sending you out. And it's my responsibility as a business owner and somebody within my community to actually send them out far better than they came in. And if I'm not doing that, I'm failing.
That makes
sense. Just
sense.
like a military approach to any level of leadership, like they're putting their faith and trust into what I'm providing as a business owner, and I don't take that lightly.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
It is. Now, folks, let me just share this with you. If you ever come to Arizona, or if you're in Arizona now, once you're probably going to visit the Grand Canyon. Think that's about it. And I will need to go to Prescott, and I need to go to Founding Fathers. One, Grant, what's your website?
Founding Fathers Collective.
FoundingFathersCollective.com. What's your address?
218 North Granite Street, Prescott.
Perfect. And it, like I said, I went there. It's an experience, and the experience was, in the beginning, it was great because I went there to fight with Raul, and he just threw me around the mat. And man, when you haven't fought in a while, because I'm not a cop anymore, and I just don't need to. It was fun. But what I liked, there was you have an instructor there. He looks like he's 17, but he talks like he's 50. So I forgot his name, but he was so nice.
Was it Rob Johnson, or was it jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Bald? Was he bald?
No. Taller, thin kid.
Oh, dude, Chabre. It was either Chabre or Hawk. They're both tall, handsome looking guys.
Yeah.
They're like male models, but they're also
phenomenal. Like he could wipe the floor with me. I know that.
Yeah.
But
one of them actually this next weekend in 2 weekends is going to compete for world title. So he has a really good shot of actually winning world championship at his belt or weight class. So
I like it. So anyways, I'm bringing that up because you got guys in there that you would see in the store, you wouldn't think that, they could pretty much wipe the floor with you, but they don't lead with their skill set. They lead with their heart. They bridge the gap between their mind and their heart, and they just talk like normal people, right? So if you come to Arizona, Prescott, come to Phoenix, Prescott's right up the valley, right up the road. I mean, go out there, hang out with these guys, get to meet them. Instagram. Do you guys have Instagram?
We do. Sean, what is it?
What is it? The Founding Fathers?
Founding Fathers Collective.
There it is.
Founding Fathers Collective.
There it is. So we have a couple seconds left, and I just want to say thank you very much for driving as far as you did to come on the show. Thank you for your patience with me, folks. When he asked me what time to be on the show, at the time I'm on a sailboat. I joined the Air Force for a reason. I'm in St. Martin getting seasick, trying to act like I'm tough, and he texts me, and I text him back the wrong information. And it was a horrible 30-second moment for me, but he dealt with it, and I appreciate that. I look forward to hanging out with you. You said somewhere up north. I got the information.
South Dakota,
yeah, folks, and I will record all of this stuff that I can. But thank you very much for tuning into the show, folks. Again, this is the Think React Lead radio show. I'm your host, Dom Faussette, here with Grant Quezada, here on the Think React Lead radio show. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you on the other side.